Chapter 6. Be Engaged. Do good by stealth and blush to find it fame. Alexander Pope. The proper aim of giving is to put the recipients in a state where they no longer need our gifts. C.S. Lewis. Philanthropy is commendable, but it must not cause the philanthropist to overlook the circumstances of economic injustice which makes philanthropy necessary. Martin Luther King, Jr. I prefer you to make mistakes in kindness rather than miracles in unkindness. Mother Teresa. Let's roll up our sleeves and get to work. As stated before, this book focuses on individual responsibility. Each of us are needed to step up and meet the needs of the people God has placed within our spheres of influence. In this chapter, we will expand the scope of our study to include service beyond an individual level. I will also talk about volunteerism in general. Like mercy, these things are acts of service, even when they are not technically acts of mercy. Still, there is enough common ground that the following principles can be applied in many settings. Thus, in addition to serving others informally as an individual, we will also look at how to minister with a group of friends, a church ministry, a parachurch organization, or a secular nonprofit charity. Overall, I hope to reinforce your appreciation for where you belong within the body of Christ. You are needed, and not just by those in desperate need. Other believers need you to help them as they also minister to those in need. We'll start with general principles and then move to more specific material. Not sure where to start? We'll talk about finding opportunities to serve. Know what you want to do but aren't sure how? We'll examine how to serve wisely. Not sure who to work with? We'll discuss how to build a great support network, vet organizations, and even pioneer new endeavors. Getting started. Have you ever seen little kids trying to help dad fix a leaky sink? They really want to help, so they ask, "Can I help? Can I help? Can I help?" Eventually, dad hands a flashlight to each one and tells them to stand in the corner. He'll call them over when it's time to shine the light onto something. They earnestly want to help, but they lack the skill, knowledge, and experience. They wind up with a low satisfaction job. It doesn't take long for discontent and disillusionment to sink in. They may be young, but they know they're not doing something meaningful. They will soon lose interest in their initial assignment. Either they will wander off to play elsewhere, or they will ramp up the intensity and demand to be put to work. When someone's got a fire in their belly, they're ready to go. They're excited and eager. They want to do something important. They want to make a difference. But they might be so new to this compassion thing that they don't know what to do. Or perhaps they've got some ideas about what to do, but they're feeling a bit overwhelmed because there are so many needs that they don't know what to do first. If this is you, then let's start by taking that flashlight out of your hands and getting you to step out of the corner. We're going to find something for you to do. When getting started, it's important to act with passion. The U.S. military requires recruits to take standardized tests when they enlist. The AFQT, Armed Forces Qualification Test, and the ASVAB, Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery, are used to reveal someone's areas of strength and ability. The test results are used to determine which job opportunities a recruit can pursue. I know someone with a BS in accounting who spoke with a recruiter. She was told she would be able to put her degree to good use in the military. However, her test results showed a high aptitude for linguistics. Despite no prior education in the field, she pivoted. The Army sent her to language training and she became a translator. While this sort of thing might work in a professional setting, I don't think it's the right approach when looking for opportunities to serve. We're not browsing the help wanted ads. You're not looking for career advancement opportunities. It's not about trying your strengths to a certain position. Mercy is different. It's neat when your competencies and resources can be used to help those with needs. It makes a lot of sense. If you have a surplus of something and you know someone needs that thing, then the path forward can be obvious. But helping others may require you to leverage your weaknesses and your incompetencies. You will need to be humble, candid, and vulnerable. You will need to strike a fine balance between being comfortable and being uncomfortable. We err when we focus solely on trying to find a perfect fit for our strengths. Why limit God's freedom to act through us? He can do more with us in our weakness than we can do with our strength. But he said to me, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weakness, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong." 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 9 and 10. There's an old idiom about the futility of trying to jam a square peg into a round hole. But being a square peg doesn't mean you can fit only square needs. God can shape you to be the peg that He needs. Exercising mercy changes us. This must be considered. Ideally, you'll be able to say, "I can do this, but I'll be stretched beyond my current level of comfort." The best place for you to serve is a place that allows you to grow. I submit to you that rather than looking for something that matches your strengths, look for something that matches your passion. When something is stuck in your gut, the Greek word splanchnizomai, you are more likely to stick with it. I believe that in most cases, the needs you are best suited to meet are those needs that are nearest to you, and not just geographically close to you. What causes do you care about? What kind of needs have you experienced that gives you empathy and insight? Have you been helped in such a way that you can return the favor by similarly investing in others? The old hymn, "Brighten the Corner Where You Are," was written by a woman who had been invited to teach in a traveling education program. It was her dream job. Unfortunately, her father was in a car accident and required long-term medical care. At first, she resented giving up that job, but she came to understand that she could still help others from her father's bedside. You don't need to wait for a grand opportunity before reaching out to others. You can make a difference right wherever you are. Doing so doesn't mean you'll be stuck in that spot forever. After all, mercy is a journey. Here is a great place to start. These good old lyrics from this hymn capture the sentiment exactly. "Brighten the Corner Where You Are" by Ina May Dooley Ogden, 1913. Do not wait until some deed of greatness you may do. Do not wait to shed your light afar. To the many duties ever near you now be true. Brighten the corner where you are. Just above are clouded skies that you may help to clear. Let not narrow self your way debar. Though into one heart alone may fall your song of cheer, brighten the corner where you are. Here for all your talent you may surely find a need. Here reflect the bright and morning star. Even from your humble hand the bread of life may feed. Brighten the corner where you are. Brighten the corner where you are. Brighten the corner where you are. Someone far from harbor you may guide across the bar. Brighten the corner where you are. When getting started, it's important to act with preparation. Having exhorted you to lean into your weaknesses, I want to ensure that you don't do so in an unhealthy way. In some Christian circles, ignorance has been raised to the level of virtue. An example of this would be, "I want to be a counselor. I've got my Bible and my common sense. That's all I need." This is a dangerous and foolish mindset. You need far more than good intentions to be an effective and competent counselor. What if someone is struggling with financial burdens and asks for your advice? What if a couple comes to you for marital counseling? What if someone is struggling with suicidal thoughts? How would you counsel someone struggling with grief after losing a family member? It is so easy to say the wrong thing. The consequences can be devastating. We must recognize when we are in over our head. There needs to be a point where we say, I don't know what to do. Let's get qualified help. Recognizing your weaknesses does not require you to be satisfied with them. You can address your weakness. Start small. If you want to be a counselor, then consider mental health first aid. Google it. Even with an MHFA certification, you'll have significant limitations as a counselor, but you'll have a better grasp of what those limitations are. You might find the MHFA training to be sufficient for your environment, or you might be spurred to undertake more advanced training. Perhaps you'll wind up earning a professional credential. Investing in competence applies to issues other than counseling. It boils down to this. If you are hyper-energized to meet a specific type of need, figure out what it will take to maximize your efforts. When getting started, it's important to act with giftedness. I've been involved with church leadership and Christian education for several decades. Over that time, I've seen a lot of teaching on spiritual gifts. Sermons, books, articles, seminars, workshops, blogs, podcasts that try to answer the basic questions such as, what are spiritual gifts? How and when do you get them? How do you figure out which ones you have? How do you activate, develop, and use them? I am amazed at how all over the place the teaching is on this topic. There is a lot of contradictory material out there. One thing that pops up often is the spiritual gift test, or something similarly named. For those who've not seen one of these, the basic idea is that you answer a bunch of questions about yourself, and then the test is scored. The results are supposed to indicate your unique spiritual gifts. We're not going to delve too deeply into giftedness, but it's prudent to mention because this subject is often featured in training programs and onboarding processes for ministry positions. The big reason we won't spend much time dissecting spiritual gifts is because the Bible doesn't spend much time dissecting them either. We don't have much information about their mechanics. Most of the material I've seen is an elaborate extrapolation of a handful of texts. The key texts are Romans 12, 1 Corinthians 12 and 14, Ephesians 4, and 1 Peter 4. Here's what I know about spiritual gifts. Spiritual gifts are divine enablements. Gifts are not personality traits, preferences, dispositions, talents, or natural abilities. Gifts are in use whenever God supernaturally equips you to do something you would not otherwise be able to do. Gifts are for believers to use to minister to others. Gifts are not for personal use, but are for use within the body of Christ. Gifts are complementary. God distributes them within believing communities as He sees fit. Your giftedness can vary with your setting. Gifts are not static. The gifts you have now might not be the gifts you had a year ago, and they might not be the gifts you'll have a year from now. You do not need to know what your gifts are to use them. You do not have dormant or hidden gifts that must be discovered, activated, or surfaced. To be clear, there are spiritual disciplines, principles, and practices that are intended for individual usage. Your talents and skills can be developed and sharpened, but these things are not spiritual gifts. I had a friend in his early 20s considering a career in ministry. To encourage him, I offered him the opportunity to speak in a teen Bible study. He was excited and intimidated by the offer. He was very prepared and very nervous. He fumbled over his words. He talked too fast. He was done within a few minutes. The kids were respectful but unengaged. He had brought a guest with him, an older man in our church who was discipling him. Everybody recognized him, including the kids. He was quiet and unassuming, with a well-deserved reputation as a godly man of prayer. As we were wrapping up the Bible study, one of the kids asked the older man why he had come. He hadn't said much all night. He said he was there to support his friend. He had learned some hard lessons when he was in his early 20s, in prison. Over the next several minutes, he shared an impromptu lesson on the importance of helping others. He had our undivided attention. We were riveted. This is the most unmistakable use of a spiritual gift I have ever witnessed. He was not a natural communicator. He was out of his depth and in unfamiliar territory. But God, recognizing a teachable moment, chose to use him as a tool. He was willing to be used, and God divinely enabled him to do something beautiful. I don't know if he ever had the gift of teaching before or after that night, but he certainly had it then. So how do spiritual gifts fit into helping others? They are a part of what you bring to the table, along with your strengths, talents, passions, experiences, resources, weakness, etc. Your gifts are explicitly related to the practice of mercy. We have different gifts according to the grace given to each of us. If your gift is prophesying, then prophesy in accordance with your faith. If it is serving, then serve. If it is teaching, then teach. If it is to encourage, then give encouragement. If it is giving, then give generously. If it is to lead, do it diligently. If it is to show mercy, do it cheerfully. Romans chapter 12, verses 6 through 8. Paul encouraged us to desire the greater gifts. 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 31. So how do you do that? Do what you are supposed to do. Put the needs of others above your own needs. Place yourself in situations where God has the freedom to divinely enable you to build his kingdom. Acting wisely. When I hear the word discretion, I think of the ability to keep your mouth shut, but that's only part of it. The Old English term discretion shares a common root with discernment. These terms refer to the ability to look at a situation, understand the factors at play, and act appropriately. Related ideas include being incisive, prudent, and clear. It involves avoiding mistakes and making optimal choices. It's about doing the right thing at the right time in the right way. I've encouraged you to lean into your weaknesses and be vulnerable in the pursuit of mercy. Now, I'm going to temper that somewhat. We're going to talk about exercising caution and sound judgment. Indeed, it is important that we put ourselves out there and take risks. It's even more important that we do so in a way that does not sabotage our efforts. The opposite of discernment is naivete, and it is not a virtue. We cannot afford to be simple-minded or gullible. The Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel, for gaining wisdom and instruction, for understanding words of insight, for receiving instruction in prudent behavior, doing what is right and just and fair, for giving prudence to those who are simple, knowledge and discretion to the young. Proverbs chapter 1, verses 1 through 4. As you work through this section, do not forget the role of prayer. It is not a cliche to say you've got to pray. Ask God to mold you and use you. These are the kind of prayers he loves to answer. Give him the opportunity to craft a masterpiece. To act wisely, it's important to act with confidentiality. Having just said that discretion is more than keeping your mouth shut, let's not neglect the fact that keeping your mouth shut is important. Keeping a low profile is necessary and vital if you want to be effective. There are several good reasons to avoid drawing unnecessary attention to yourself and to those you are trying to help. Look at it from the perspective of the ones in need. There is stigma attached to being needy and receiving aid, It can prevent someone from seeking or accepting help. We know people can be judgmental. It's way too easy to make assumptions about those with extreme needs. Obviously, something went wrong, so it must be their fault somehow, right? They're probably suffering because they're sinful, irresponsible, lazy, stupid, or something else. Being cautious improves access by removing barriers. It also allows those you're trying to help maintain some dignity. It gives both parties greater freedom to act. Generosity without discretion can replace hope with shame. Furthermore, Jesus taught us to do it this way. He publicly castigated those who were motivated by vanity. The real failure was in the hearts of those purporting to be generous. Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others, to be seen by them. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. So when you give to the needy, do not announce it with trumpets, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets, to be honored by others. Truly I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. Matthew chapter 6, verses 1 through 4. What about giving publicly to motivate or inspire others to give? After all, Jesus clearly warned us against giving in such a way that others would heap honor upon us. Just a few moments earlier, Jesus mentioned that we should do good deeds in such a way that those who see them would give glory to God. The key distinction is who gets the credit. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Matthew chapter 5, verses 14 through 16. Compare the obvious difference between the two following statements. A. Please support this ministry. I have worked with them for many years. I know firsthand they do good work. Please join me and help them expand their reach. B. Please support this ministry. I have given several thousands of dollars to help them. They wouldn't be as effective without gifts like mine. Give what you can, even if it's not as much as I give. To act wisely, it's important to act with trust. Now I'm going to open a can of worms by asking a few questions that I cannot adequately answer. This will create some tension that I do not know how to resolve. I do know that this is an issue where we consistently fail to act wisely and we need better answers. Let's start with a couple of illustrations. Illustration number 1. A detective working a difficult case was at an impasse and a homeless man gave him a helpful tip. After closing the case, he wanted to thank him by giving him a pair of nice, warm boots. The man graciously accepted the gift, and they went their separate ways. Several months later, they ran into each other again. The detective noticed he was wearing old sneakers. When asked about the boots, he said, "I can't wear those out here. I sold them and used the money to buy second-hand clothes that wouldn't get me killed in my sleep." Illustration 2. A woman's shelter stages a beauty drive and asks the community to donate products for the residents. Most of the donations come from middle-class white women, while most of the residents are minorities. Unfortunately, many of the donated products go unused because the residents simply can't use them. You can see good intent. The givers mean well. They are generous. They provided nice things. They also committed avoidable mistakes. They gave what they thought was needed rather than what was needed. They accurately saw a need, but they misjudged the solution. The homeless shelter discovered that their donors gave the type of products that they used for themselves. When you give to a program like this, it's better to ask what they need before you buy stuff to donate. When you help someone, it's important to meet the actual need rather than your perception of the need. It's deceptively hard to do. After all, if you see a homeless man wearing worn-out shoes, then give him a nice pair of shoes sounds like a no-brainer. But is it? It's not easy to buy shoes for someone else. I would select my own shoes rather than having a stranger pick them out for me. I can do a much better job of sizing and fitting a pair of shoes for myself. What would have happened if the detective had invited the homeless man to go shopping for shoes? Perhaps he could have given the man some cash and said, "I'd like you to have some nice shoes. Will this help?" It's easy to think, everybody knows you can't just give cash to homeless people. They'll use it to buy booze. Like I said earlier, I'm not sure what the best answer is, but I am pretty sure that the answer isn't giving him a pair of shoes that will get him shivved. It is possible to mean well yet offer assistance in a way that is received as condescending, insulting, and/or harmful. Ill-informed actions can generate skepticism, anger, distrust, and/or animosity. Good intentions aren't enough to offset the implied, "Well, bless their heart, but they're just not capable of doing this on their own." Furthermore, it's not unusual for someone to do everything right while trying to help someone, but they face obstacles because those who preceded them poisoned the well by acting in a counterproductive way. Another example of this is a common policy among rescue missions requiring some to sit through a chapel service and prayer time before they get food. I understand the intent. They've got religious needs too, but surely there's a better way to do it. I've been a youth pastor for a long time, and I've seen many teens forced by parents to go to church. Do you know what happens when those teens become adults? They stop going to church. They resent being forced to go. By taking away their agency, their parents crushed their kids' curiosity in the things of God. Those kids wind up wanting nothing to do with church. Again, I'm not sure what the best answer is, but this kind of thinking ultimately leads to the exact opposite of the desired outcome. We need to consider the possibility that we are not always the best judge of a person's needs. We need to respectfully ask questions, and we need to trust those we're trying to help. What kinds of risks are we willing to take in the pursuit of mercy, love, and justice? How can we be active partners with those in need, rather than requiring them to passively accept whatever it is that we deem to be in their best interest? Please don't get me wrong. I know the rules and regulations implemented by charitable organizations were put into place because of fraud or abuse. There's no denying it happens. Welfare abuse in particular has been studied ad infinitum. What we've learned is that the public's trust in such programs is low, but the actual rate of fraud is much lower. By and large, welfare resources are getting to those who genuinely need help. Shockingly, the most common form of fraud is committed by non-beneficiaries, such as embezzlement by a service organization's staff. Yes, it's imperative to take steps to limit abuse, but at what cost? Harsh regulations make it more difficult for everyone, especially those who are most vulnerable. Regardless of the rules, there comes a point where we must entrust the outcome to God. If we're going to err in how we help others, I think it's better to be too lenient rather than too stringent. The practice of mercy requires the pursuit of wisdom. If something is not working well, then we need to humbly admit the need to pivot. We need to try something else. We need to do the work. We need to get creative. We need to be teachable. We need to listen. We need to trust. Daniel and his friends were young men living in Judah when their homeland was invaded by the Babylonians. Their homes were destroyed and their families were scattered. They were taken to Babylon and forced to serve in the royal court. The official who was charged with their training liked them. He genuinely cared. But his initial efforts to help revealed his ignorance. When they explained what they needed, he pivoted. He continued to help them, but in an appropriate way, which led to a better outcome. He is a great example of open-minded compassion. Now God had caused the official to show favor and compassion to Daniel. Daniel chapter 1, verse 9. To act wisely, it's important to act with firmness. Tough love is something that many people talk about without fully understanding what it is. As such, the term is saddled with misleading connotations. I don't like the term, but it's what we have, so I'll roll with it for now. It is not simply being strict. It is not a justification for abusive treatment. It's not a withholding kind of love. It is not walking away from someone in need. Properly understood, tough love is an approach that requires setting firm boundaries and then sticking to them. It's intended to help someone overcome a problem that is harming them and those who love them. It is a last resort after more conventional efforts have failed to be effective. If all goes well, tough love can motivate someone to change their behavior in a lasting way. If someone has an addiction and they need food, handing them a wad of cash is not going to help either problem. This is just one kind of situation where tough love could be warranted. I am not advocating refusing to help this person. That's not tough love. Giving them money isn't the best way to help them, but neither is withholding help. Whichever way you go, the road ahead will be difficult. It's complicated, hard, and messy. You're going to be challenged and rejected. You will question yourself at almost every juncture. It is going to be far tougher for you than it will be for the other party. Do not lose sight of the goal. Tough love done right is about helping someone step from darkness into light. It's about replacing turmoil with peace. It's about giving help and nurturing hope. I can't give you much in terms of specific guidelines of how to do it. Each situation is unique enough that you must be very careful and very discerning. Do your homework. Commit to seeing it through. Maintain a sense of humility. Keep your eyes open and learn what does and doesn't work. And please recognize and admit when you are in over your head. Get help. If the person you are trying to help refuses to see a mental health professional, consider seeing one for your own benefit. To act wisely, it's important to act within boundaries. Moral injury, vicarious trauma, secondary traumatic stress, burnout, compassion fatigue. These terms describe similar yet distinct phenomena known to be a cost of caring. These costs are commonly associated with helping professions such as medical professionals, teachers, law enforcement officers, clergy, and social workers. Those who serve in these roles witness senseless tragedy and trauma often. Continued and sustained exposure to severe needs and its associated suffering can cause someone to become apathetic, exhausted, insensitive, depressed, hopeless, listless, dissatisfied, frustrated, irritable, numb, and a whole list of other symptoms. The exercise of mercy exacts a toll on those who practice it. Helping others is a draining process, and it's possible for you to be emptied to the point of danger. The aforementioned professionals are aware of these threats. I cannot provide enough information here to equip you to handle these issues. I merely hope to raise your awareness and point you in the right direction for more assistance. When you start to feel overwhelmed, get help for you. The importance of a well-rounded, diverse support group cannot be overstated. You need to have a competent mental health professional on speed dial. Those in your support group are likely to see signs of your distress before you do, so commit now to listen to them. The best time to build a support network is before you need it. Oddly, those most prone to being cripplingly overwhelmed are those who are new to their service roles. It takes time and practice to sharpen coping skills, so rookies need to be aware that they are more vulnerable than seasoned veterans. When I was a school teacher, I had a late assignment policy. I would accept work after the due date, but it would lose a letter grade each day it was late. When a student would turn something in a day or two late, and if the student had done an acceptable job, I'd remind them that they did the same quantity and quality of work as those students to get an A. If they had turned it in on time, they would have gotten full credit. We should always strive for full credit in our efforts to help others. This is not a reference to garnering public recognition, but getting a full return on our investment. The assignment is hard enough that we can't afford to waste effort. Practice discretion. Exercise discernment. Working together. Over half of the New Testament books are epistles, which are letters. As such, they are structured similarly. They start with a greeting identifying who it is from and who it is to. With few exceptions, the epistles are written from a church leader, such as Paul or Peter, to a group of believers, such as Romans, or to groups of believers, such as 1 Peter. It's easy to skim over the first few verses if they're boilerplate material, but don't skip the to. Most of these books are written to believers. The English language compounds the problem. We used to have ye, plural, and thou, singular, but these pronouns were gradually smashed into you. Now we need contextual clues to determine if you is either singular or plural. This ambiguity has infiltrated how we read Scripture. For example, this well-known promise has encouraged many Christians facing trials and temptations. No temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, He will also provide a way out so that you can endure it. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13. This is not, strictly speaking, a promise to me or you as individuals. Each of the above highlighted uses of you is a second-person plural pronoun. It is clear from context that Paul is addressing a plurality of believers. This is true of most of the commands, promises, and warnings in the epistles. They're to ye, not thou. Therefore, us. It is vitally important to grasp this principle. God does not intend for His people to live in isolation. I have repeatedly mentioned the need for us to work together as we practice mercy. There are so many good reasons for us to do this together, not the least of which is that God wants us to do it this way. Let's look at building an effective support network, working with organizations, and how to lead a pioneering compassion endeavor. When working together, here are some guidelines for working with individuals. We've already talked at length about the importance of a support network. How do we assemble such a team? If we're doing this right, they will have influence over much more than a joint pursuit of mercy. They will help to become the best possible version of ourselves. Toward this end, we will need diversity and unity in our network. We need people who are on the same page, but in different paragraphs. By this, I mean that we need to be part of a community where everyone is moving in the same general direction, people who share passions, visions, and goals. But we also need balance. We should want people around us who see things differently than we do. This offsets blind spots and helps us notice things we would otherwise miss. We need other believers in our support network. The Bible often uses the metaphor of a body. See Romans 12, 1 Corinthians 12, and Ephesians 4, in describing the church. All the body parts are needed. When something is missing or hurt, the remaining parts are compromised. We also need people who do not look like us. People of a different age, gender, race, political party, family upbringing, etc. bring different perspectives to the table. Note that different does not mean better or worse. It just means not the same. We don't have to agree completely with everyone in our network. For example, we can have co-laborers who belong to a different denomination or faith background. A disagreement about infant baptism or the nature of communion shouldn't prevent us from cooperating with others to provide food and shelter to the homeless. When it comes to meet needs, we need people that understand those who are trying to serve. If our target includes a minority or disadvantaged group, We can't assume that we completely understand their needs. It's a crippling form of madness to fail to incorporate their perspective into our network. A healthy and effective network works on 3 levels: apprentice, mentor, and peer. Apprentice. You need someone in your life who is actively investing in you and pushing you forward. You need to be a student, mentee, novice, etc. If you currently do not have a mentor, seek one out. Talk to those you admire and respect for their spiritual maturity, such as a pastor, counselor, family member, or friend. They don't need to be older than you. They just need to be a little further ahead of you on a path that you intend to travel. Depending on your needs and goals, you might need different mentors for specific endeavors. Don't just pick someone and follow from afar. Make sure they know that they are your mentor. There should be some formality to this relationship. Meet regularly to discuss how you're doing. Allow them to give you advice. Actively work to be humble, teachable, and vulnerable. Mentorship is particularly important in the practice of mercy. Seek out those who are already serving in other ways you admire. Ask how they got started. Ask what they need. Ask if you can shadow them. Ask. Those on the front line find these kinds of questions to be a source of encouragement. You do not need to know these folks personally, at least at first. Reach out via social media or old-fashioned mail. They will appreciate it, and you will too. Mentor. You also need someone in your life whom you are actively investing in and pushing them forward. You need to be a teacher, mentor, expert, etc. Allow your mentors to see a return on their investment in you by investing in others. What you have gained from a good mentorship can also help someone else. You don't have to figure everything out. You just need to be a little further down a path than the one you are guiding. This is how we raise up the next generation of leadership. Mentorship is the best succession plan for helping others. Make sure your mentor knows that you're working on being a mentor as well. If they're any good at their job, they'll help you be good at your job too. You need to appreciate the importance of both sides in an accountability relationship. Do additional research on how to be a good mentor. There are many good resources out there. I have experienced both sides of this. It is wonderful when it works right. I've grown because someone who loved me was empowered to call me out when I needed to be corrected. I've also grown when I've needed to help someone see their need for course correction. There are numerous examples of mentoring relationships in Scripture: Moses and Joshua, Naomi and Ruth, Elijah and Elisha, Paul and Timothy, and Jesus and the 12. Peer. You also need a circle of people who are roughly at the same level you are. Mentoring relationships require work and structure. It's great and it's important. You need it, but you also need a break. These peer relationships are the meat and potatoes of serving others. These are the folks you are working with in the trenches. They are the ones who have your back. You need people in your life who can sympathize with your struggles and celebrate your successes without turning each one of those moments into a teaching opportunity. Certainly you can learn from each other. Various situations might demand someone take the lead for a time. Working within this dynamic allows one person's strength to complement another person's weakness. Over time, you'll discover that peer level of support network contains former mentors and mentees. It's a beautiful thing. When working together, here are some guidelines for working with organizations. I have yet to elaborate on working within charitable organizations, whether they be religious, secular, or government endeavors. This has been intentional, but we're going to talk about it now. This material applies to financial support and/or volunteer work. The idea of practicing corporate charity is as old as Christianity itself. Notably, Paul organized a selection among Gentile churches to support the needy believers in the church at Jerusalem. Romans 15, Corinthians 16, 2 Corinthians 8 and 9, and Galatians 2. Some needs are so big that a group is needed because an individual is not enough. Sometimes an organization can open a door that an individual can't. How do you know which charitable organizations are good to support? Understandably, there's some fear and skepticism when it comes to charities. Are they fiscally responsible? Do they have integrity? Are they competent? You're going to need to do some research, and fortunately, that is easier than it used to be because of so much information that is available online. Search engines are powerful enough that you now can try expressions like, "How can I help fight homelessness in my neighborhood?" I just tried that and got 125 million results. Obviously, be careful and practice discernment, but you can find great stuff with minimal effort. Once you find a specific organization you'd like to vet more thoroughly, treat it like you're conducting a job interview. Read their literature, verify their qualifications, check references, read reviews, etc. When searching online, make sure you've got the right name. There are a lot of different outfits out there, and many have similar names. Once you're sure you've got the right name, add fraud or abuse to your search term. Consult charity oversight organizations. Within the United States, you can find helpful resources with the IRS, Attorney General, Federal Trade Commission, and Better Business Bureau. Some states or municipalities might have additional resources. There are also independent watchdog organizations such as Charity Navigator, Charity Watch, and others. They provide details on how much organizations have received in donations, how high their overhead expenses are, how their funds are dispersed to those in need, etc. You would do well to research the watchdogs too. Look for evidence that they're a well-run organization. Can you find clear mission, purpose, and vision statements? Do they have 501c3 status? Do they provide tax deductions for donations? It's not that you can't work with organizations lacking one or more of these things, but if they've jumped through all of these hoops, then they are more likely to be legitimate. If you're on social media, ask your circle of friends what they know about an organization. Check the organization's social media presence. Ask a question or two to see what kind of response you get. When it comes to fundraising efforts, ask questions. It's common for a charity to host a banquet, sale, or other event. For example, a group might try raising money by selling candles. They only get part of the sale price. You could buy $20 worth of candles, but they might get $12. If you don't want a candle, a gift of $15 goes further. As you work through the process, you will learn a lot about how other organizations approach similar problems. Keep an open mind and consider switching gears. Finally, I caution you not to be so caught up in the investigation that you fail to follow through on a commitment. If you're discouraged with your experience in your first attempt, keep looking. Don't allow due diligence to slide into unnecessary inactivity. When working together, here are some guidelines for working with initiative. What do you do if you see a huge need, but you don't see any efforts to adequately meet that need? Perhaps there's a growing homeless problem in your city. Perhaps there's a food desert in your neighborhood. Perhaps there's a recent natural disaster that has impacted a lot of people in your community. There are many, many, many more examples of commonly undermet large-scale needs. You see it. You know something needs to be done. So, do something. I will only suggest a first step, but it's a good one. Get people together. Bring them into a room, share your heart with them, ask them to help. Let's walk through this by using a food desert as an example. You're going to need to recruit people. Who? Those who are impacted and those who can help. You need a good grasp of the problem, so talk to people who understand it from multiple angles. Talk to those who live in the neighborhood. Ask them how they're currently managing and what they would find helpful. You also need people who have the passion, knowledge, experience, and means to meet the need. Invite community leaders, business owners, elders, and deacons from your church known as philanthropists, etc. Aim big. Don't be intimidated. If you're working on assembling a dream team, try to get at least one representative from each of the categories: medical, law enforcement, legal, insurance, finance, church, nonprofit, and government. Your particular endeavor may not need all these perspectives, but you don't know what you don't know. Once you've got a list of people who you think you can help, invite them to meet in person. You can reserve a classroom at a local school or church, but please don't try to do this remotely or via email exchanges. What do you share? The problem and your passion. Even if you've got some ideas about how to solve the problem, I'd recommend keeping those ideas to yourself, at least at first. Focus on the problem. Consider asking someone who is impacted by the problem to share their dilemma with your group. After you've laid it out there, ask, what can be done? I recommend saying something like this. I'm not asking anyone to make a long-term commitment. I invited each of you because I value your expertise and I hope you can offer some insight towards a solution. If you're unable to work with this project beyond this meeting, I understand. I do ask that you'll brainstorm with us for the remainder of the meeting. Help me prepare to take the next step. If you are willing to continue working on this project, let me know after this meeting. Plan to go through this cycle multiple times. You'll get tips on who else you can invite. Hopefully, each iteration brings you closer to a solution. During these brainstorming sessions, deliberately lean on the expertise of others. When someone with special qualifications, such as a lawyer, raises a point, listen, even when it feels like they're recreating unnecessary work or unduly impeding progress. You must consider the point being made. For some of us, it is difficult to defer or delegate. It can be scary to let go, but it's necessary. This is a powerful way to build consensus while simultaneously demonstrating competence, inspiring confidence, and generating excitement. As you make progress, regularly assess if your team has blind spots that need to be addressed. Perhaps you will discover someone else who has already started to work on the problem. Are they available to discuss their journey with you? Can you work with them? Also, be prepared to be disappointed. It's not going to be easy or straightforward. You will face discouragement, skepticism, and opposition. There will be people who you thought would support the endeavor, but they don't. Don't allow these setbacks to deter you. Every successful endeavor was, at one time, a new endeavor. Stay the course, press on, pursue mercy. In the light of our own unique identities, let each of us therefore do what we are suited to do. In the light of our own unique mission fields, let each of us therefore meet those with needs wherever we may be. In the light of our own unique networks, let each of us therefore work well with others. I want to become someone who gets up early and has a great workout before going to work. But I also am prone to putzing around the house or playing with my phone. I know if I can start moving, I will eventually get productive. For me, the biggest struggle is getting started. So I will say to myself, show up. I usually have to say it many times. Show up, show up, show up. Once I'm at the gym or on the treadmill, the hard part is over. Now that I'm here, I want my efforts to be worthwhile. I want more than a workout. I want a good workout. My mantra shifts from show up to make it count. Make it count, make it count, make it count. I've discovered that gym rats are a great community. The regulars provide a much appreciated layer of accountability and encouragement. We love to hear and to say, good job. Let's get to work. Let's show up. Let's make it count. Let's do it together.